So that,
We're live from Hong Kong with James. Go ahead.
so you can see right now they're starting to clear and remove these barricades. You can see they're using some manual tools here, cutting off the plastic resistance that's been put on here. So as they're preparing the clearance, we're being swarmed by media all around who's covering this. There's hundreds of media people, much more media presence than protesters actually, as we're in the front here watching them begin to remove these barricades.
Now, they told you they were going to do this.
Right, there was a clear warning ahead, and posted an ad in the newspaper yesterday, which is why everyone was aware and prepared for this. So it's very crowded actually, as we're right at the front here, but everyone's gathered around just to witness the barricades being removed. But so far it's been very peaceful. There's been no resistance by the students because they said this is not an important area. As long as they don't clear the main site, they're not worried with losing this small street leading to CITIC Tower, who went to court to fight for this injunction to allow cars to pass into their building.
Right now, the barricades were just held by zip ties.
Yep, zip ties, that's all it is. They're having a hard time though, because there are just so many zip ties. So they are struggling a bit here. And it looks like they're actually using protesters themselves to help clear. So you see the guy in the black hat and the yellow bandana. They're actually protesters. So these guys are having such a hard time clearing, protesters are helping them. So we were under the impression that the bailiffs would clear these, or at least the CITIC Tower staff. But we can see here protesters are actually helping remove the barricades themselves.
Again, there seems to be no end.
Even helping the court execute their injunction orders. So let me just try and get you a full view. So to show you exactly what's being removed today, this right here, this is CITIC Tower. And so they want this road open because their car park leads to the corner there. So cars in the car park have not been able to come out, which is why they're planning on opening up this road so people whose cars have been parked there for the last month and a half can finally get their cars out. Hopefully their parking bill isn't crazy.
I'm sure they'll be very happy to see their cars.
Right, but you can see over here, police are actually removing the barricades. Oh, I should say bailiffs, not the police, sorry.
These bailiffs and police are being met with no resistance at all.
So you can see the bailiffs right there and the police next to them.
On the front side of City Tower facing Victoria Harbour. Now they're taken away.
So this area was full of barricades about 10 minutes ago. They've all been removed now. And you can see people are walking across the sidewalk now, which wasn't happening here previously. So Citic Tower, the main entrance now, there are no barricades blocking Citic Tower. So now people are able to walk freely right across the entrance, and police who are behind the original barricades are now starting to move forwards into the main protest site. So these guys are all police. They were originally back behind these barricades that are now removed, and they're now moving closer towards the main site. A few hundred police officers now are moving in towards the main protest area. We'll just follow them. I guess they're shadowing the bailiffs, who are now removing more barricades, and this time inside the protest site.
Yeah, one person and a helicopter. Like 30 meters.
It's a bit more chaotic now that they've moved inside the protest area. So before it was more calm because it was outside on Citic Tower. So police have now called for a video team because one of the protesters is on a loud horn, kind of heckling the people clearing. So now the police have called for a video team. So the video team's now coming in and they're going to record the protester on the loudspeaker. And here's the video camera. So that's the video team they've called for. And they're being instructed to, so the seniors instructed the video person to specifically record the person on the loud mic. So they have to set the time. He's receiving instructions. He's saying record the loud person. So you can see barricades are being taken away here. So we've moved away from the center now because you can see in the middle where the umbrellas are. That's where the barricades are being removed at the moment from the middle area there, about 10 meters ahead.
So protesters are giving us the Admiralty zone, but they're keeping...
Oh no. No. They're not giving up Admiralty. They're just giving up a side street of the main Admiralty Square, and that's Timway Avenue.
Okay, so
this is a
side street.
Right, it's a side street that's leading to the main protest site. But the reason there's so much media presence here is they're worried that if they clear more than this site, there could be problems. So everyone has so far accepted on both sides that the street would be cleared. So the students have accepted it, the protesters have accepted it. So that's kind of the handshake agreement of what's to be cleared today. And the tweet earlier I posted showed the 6 specific barricades that were to be cleared in order, and so they are following that order. The tower entrance, they should move on to this one, and lastly the barricade over at the parking entrance of Citic Tower. So these backpacks are all cops here. There's a few hundred plainclothes police officers.
Around here to bailiffs and policemen taking away barriers. Now it appears that at least these barriers are seeing right here.
Something's happening in the middle. Bailiff's having a little chat here. So management was just whispering something to the bailiffs. So these guys in the suits seem to be in charge, at least. These two right here.
Well, remember they do want to get better cars. They're probably going to be trying to get their cars out.
So even you can see here the people in the orange are observed. So they're here to make sure that the police don't step out of line during this clearance. And there's a lot of them. We haven't seen them before, but this time we see about 10 of these people in orange hats and shirts with the Human Rights Watch from Hong Kong.
That's very good.
Oh, sorry, Human Rights Monitor, he said. Human Rights Monitor. I got that a little wrong. He corrected me there. Human Rights Monitor.
Have them, man.
Let's try and get a bit more in here because we're quite on the outside. There could be some resistance. So this officer's just said in Cantonese to get ready, so it looks like they have to work. So he's just told his fellow officers here in Cantonese to get ready. So it looks like the police might have to step in here, because it looks like in front of us it is resistance from the protester, especially the one on the loud horn in front of us, which is why they're not being cleared so quickly. So, but these officers on the side, the one looking at you, or looking at us right now, has just been told to get ready by the guy in the glasses on his left. So the gentleman in the glasses right there, he's the one who's giving sort of a cry, you know, we should get ready to work soon. So you can see there are rows of them directly behind. So they could easily move in at any time if they want to. But I think they're just trying to let the situation kind of de-escalate on its own. And you can see there's an aerial drone present right there, to the left of that lamppost. There's a drone flying.
I believe that's a police drone or a protest drone.
It's probably a civilian media drone, but that's probably taking some awesome pictures right now. So more and more people are gathering across this square. The crowd is getting larger and larger by the minute around here. Because this was expected to be a rather smooth clearance. So it looks like they are now moving the barricades out. You can see on the left, they are starting to move the barricades from the middle. So it looks like they were able to cut them and remove a few of the barricades at least. So it looks like barricades are being removed. So here we can see a few of them here now. They're cutting off the rest of the zip ties. Said be careful, watch out, watch your feet. Watch your feet as we say. Be told to why.
Appear to be having technical.
They're not letting them move. Not letting them can see this mass protest.
Like James is saying that the mass protesters barricades move. The audio is very unclear. The video seems frozen.
Right in the middle of this, the loud horns.
The sound is pretty distorted. We seem to have lost James from Hong Kong. Before James was cut off, James was saying that there was one protester with a megaphone who was making trouble for the police. The police were having difficulty moving them out of the situation. But as you could see from the video, it looked like they had gotten to the last barricades and they were going to go ahead and cut the zip ties and remove those barricades. This is only for one side street of the Admiralty protest, which was the second and smaller protest in the South. The rest of the protests will continue. It seems this protest or this taking down of the barricades was mainly to please the owners of the city tower. It appears that their cars had been trapped in there for the last month and a half. It looks like James is rejoining. James, how's it?
Well, this is before they let them move these specific barricades, and they're not getting a response now. No saying anything. We've got the Citic Tower guy right in front of us. He's just hugging the barricade. The guy with the glasses in front of him. They're saying they're just removing any random barricade without following the court order. So they said you've got to be clear about what you're removing.
頭先我哋係聽唔清楚你搞乜嘢，講乜嘢，執達你代表唔該，搞清楚要踩咩地方。以我哋認知呢度係唔應該拆嘅喎。嚟緊啊！嚟緊啊！
so it looks like they're bringing someone in here who can confirm whether or not this is part of the court order. So the bailiffs are here now. It's right here. And they have... So here's a bailiff right in front of us.
在場嘅人士留意，我哋司法機構事務力特。法庭業主嘅合法代理人清除及移走我中信大廈出入口及阻塞天龍匯道車輛及行人通道嘅障礙物。你哋嘅行為係會阻礙執達主任執行職務。如再繼續此行為，有可能觸犯藐視法庭罪，並立即停止，否則我哋會要協助拘捕你。
She will tell the police to come and assist.
We appear to be having just a second, but we seem to be having a difficulty reaching James. But before we lost James, they were having a property dispute live on the air. The police were coming in to see if this barricade was part of the court-ordered removed barricades. The protesters were claiming that it wasn't. The police were claiming that it was. The bailiff was there. She had a clipboard, and it appears she was calling to headquarters to find out if this is one of the barricades that was scheduled to be removed. We're also joined by Mr. Chris Ellis. Chris, are you there?
I am, yes. Hello.
How's it going?
Yeah, it's good. It's 3 in the morning here.
你要解釋清楚，可以講到。
There is resistance right now. Let's see what happens now. He wants an explanation.
你可唔可以讓開？我解釋清楚未？唔係啊，但你要解釋清楚，你身為司法機構，你應該解釋㗎嘛。
Could you please explain? We're live. Can you please explain what the protesters are asking for?
They are asking we want to see the front.
可唔可以
Can you please show the
我想
protesters?
知點樣，因為我希望幫我到手嚇，唔好
可以。
我想知道約房嗰個清嘅界線到邊度，因為已經啦，你知道今朝咧我已經
This could be a legislator right here. This is a legislator.
我一定要知道
Government official, the Democratic because we can see the situation being escalated. There's a government official, a Democratic government official who stepped in now to keep the peace, to talk to the bailiffs.
你執頭主任係咪想收埋有好多嘢咧？可能已經今日可唔可以？
對唔住你。
有啲嘢已經係做咗啲嘢配合咗㗎啦，你見到而家。咁所以睇下今日可唔可以盡量大家有個共同理解，好唔好？
He wants a peaceful solution. Stepped in on behalf of his protesters.
你嗰度咪講嘢啦。依家我請佢哋嘅執法利嗰度嘅辦事處嘅負責人咧，都解釋佢嘅今日嗰個行動咧，約摸個界線到邊度。
So the protesters are no longer
嗱，啲嘢咧，我知道係願意配合㗎，但我哋要知道個界線喺邊度咧，因為有啲地方好多人喺度瞓緊覺嘅，仲有啲人喺度嘅。我係啊。
知道喎，要知道咩晒？唔係，我問清楚。我咪清楚個 floor plan 係咩咯？可唔可以第二個大聲公過嚟？唔該。呢度有。
而家就要去解釋咯，就係。
So the guy in the glasses and the pink tie. He works for CITIC Tower. The lady in the glasses in front of us and the gentleman they work for the courts. This gentleman is a politician trying to keep the peace.
我而家等緊佢哋嗰啲人過嚟講咯。你等陣我啦，等下我。
And so you can see we're at the centre of the commotion, and there's meters of
係
people.
我哋有個圖喺度，我哋自己有個圖㗎。後面啦，後面啦。唔係呢個，唔係呢個，佢哋工作有個圖喺度。佢哋停起停。唔係嗰時咪俾我。佢多份稿嚟嘅。你講得問啊，但係佢嗰年代有咗。
係追晒啲嘢個政府。
即係黃。
The audio is on a I'm afraid again, I'm going to mute it briefly. We'll see if we can get this back. Yeah, there it is. We've lost him again. Hopefully he'll rejoin us soon. But it looked like there was a legislator on the ground from the Hong Kong legislator who was attempting to peacefully resolve the issue of the barricades. The protesters are claiming that one of the barricades should not be removed. The police are not exactly sure and are consulting with headquarters, and they're attempting to figure out this situation out. They are removing the barricades on one side street to allow access to the parking garage at City Plaza. So it is a very small reduction in the protest, but still the protesters are watching it very carefully.
唔配合啊！
我哋執翻啲自己啲嘢啊，大佬。
你講啦，錄音機。譬如嗰個你哋會唔會嗰個中信出嚟嘅個停車場嗰度咧，唔想轉左咧？因為轉左有好多路障同埋有啲熒幕喺度嘅，俾唔俾轉左嗰條路會正嗰陣。你睇到㗎，即係大陸
商量咁樣，
大陸嗰度啊。嗱，我係想幫大家幫手㗎。今日我唔係想
都唔清楚啊！
因為我就唔講
都唔清楚，大佬。
大家唔好做，大家如果攞過嚟咧 ，OK 就會清呢個地。OK， 嗱我想知道好啦，清呢度咧，你咪成個迴旋處都要通，抑或淨係呢度？因為佢一出嚟呢度，成個迴旋處，跟住成個迴旋處。但係呢度出嚟已經轉到入去龍尾道啊！呢個係龍尾道㗎咯喎，呢度你出嚟因為條路都好闊㗎喎，龍尾道係雙程行駛。啊，本身呢度都係單程㗎嘛，根本就係都雙程啦已經係嘛啊？你嗰邊係利用到嗰邊，你本身我同個係邊尾道龍匯道車輛及行人嘅。而家唔使重複。我哋知啊，
即係話咧，嗰架車 suppose 咧係點樣樣？係轉嚟係呢一個咁嘅 barricade 咧，係阻止啲咁嘅車。係啊，你執大利你要解釋㗎嘛，執大利先可以做嘢㗎嘛。係啊，你解釋清楚佢解釋先。即係依家目前我都清楚，你攞。
Oh, we lost him.
What do you think of the situation so far, Chris?
I think you've got a, what's the expression? An unstoppable object and a, what is that expression? You've got two
movable force meets an unstoppable object, something like that. I know where you're getting. It's one of the laws of motion.
Yeah, that's what I feel is going on right now. Is that it's all coming to a head.
你邊啲係唔夠嘅？係嗰個唔該。點啊？開會先啊！地方㗎啦。其實嗰啲我哋攞3隻啊，雖然最高。
It's a new type of distortion. It's the white noise distortion this time.
They've gone analog on us.
That the sing-song quality of the language, and then the way that the frequencies are moving up and down. It sounded like like a keyboard, like a synthesizer. It's really something, just distortion. We're obviously having time.
我真係聽唔到嘅，我希望睇嘅。
Oh,
I wonder if he's being blocked. I wonder if the signal is like they're using jammers or something. They must have cottoned on to the live streaming by now, and it's not difficult to do.
it wouldn't be a bad idea to jam the internet in situations like this. Of course, in the U.S. anyway, they've talked about that, but there is a health concern. There's an emergency concern where if you're jamming internet or cell phone or any of these services, that you're essentially cutting those people off and putting them at risk in a potential emergency situation. So, I'd love to.
邊嘅兩支味道近邊嘅。OK。我哋咧就可以呢個路我哋即係入去會讀味道嗰度，我大主任之後呢度咧，我呢個。
清楚先，我哋唔係話唔合作。其實原告人已經係你講唔清楚，講唔清楚啊嘛。除咗呢度有其他地方。
It is an amazing world where we can broadcast an image of this lady's ear on the internet.
嗱，先生，我睇到呢隻手咧就捉住個電話嘅。先生，後邊
This is a hand on the barricade. So he's using that. The guy has and he's threatening so he's threatening the protester now. He's threatening the protester, saying he's in contempt of the court.
我哋你可能觸犯了司法程序。請你立即否則我哋要求警方解釋咗啦。
Such an interesting contrast with civil society. Like, these officials have come in with their clipboards and their orders, and they want them to move, but apparently there's. Let's see, James, can we hear you? Looks like you're breaking off again right now.
Maybe just leave the image up but take the sound off, because we haven't had good sound for a long time.
Yeah, it looks like he cuts out again. Whenever we lose the sound, we lose the picture. Okay, muted. Alright, so he's muted for now. We're still getting kind of a black image right now. It sounded like from the coverage that one of the protesters was refusing to leave the barricades. He had placed his hand on the barricade. The police officer was reading orders to him. It sounded like he'd be in contempt of court if he continued to hold on to the barricade. And it looked like the situation was escalating. Despite the large number of media, the large number of uniformed police, and according to James, the large number of clandestine police officers in the crowd. Chris, what do you think of this developing situation?
I think that James is being very brave. I sent him some more Bitcoin donations from the other day. Thank you to everyone who'd sent those in. I am the custodian of that wallet just because James was repeatedly having his phone taken for whatever reason. Either it was evidence in something or he was getting it stolen, and so we unfortunately, having lost the first round of funds, which we're reimbursing from mostly James's personal money, we decided it would be better if I was the custodian of the keys, and so I've been looking after those and just sending them as soon as he needs them. So I'll just send him the coins, and then he'll spend them straight away, so he's not looking after them. So I think that he's doing an incredible job. I think he's taken up this role very well, and without any journalistic training ever. In fact, this is very different to his regular job. He's just gone straight into it, and he started reporting it. And I think he deserves to be commended for that. And it was always going to happen. What's happening now is always on the cards. It was just a question of when, how violent it was going to be. And I think this what's going on in Hong Kong right now is rather prescient, and is probably a precognition of what will happen in the rest of the world. You know, I always thought that the East, you know, the empires travel from east to west, or at least all the great ones do. And whatever happens in Hong Kong will probably set the tone for the rest of the sort of the global shift that we're about to see take place between the commons. Really, this is about the uprising of the commons, and about the fact that, I mean, I'm doing a presentation in a couple of days in France. In fact, my flight leaves in about 5 hours, and I'm staying up the whole night because I may as well. And trying to frame this. Like, they're asking me to, you know, give a talk on cryptocurrency, so it's like, well, how long is your string? I don't know. I feel like we're in a real transition at the moment. It's very difficult to sort of phrase it, but there's a strong sense amongst people, just lay people, just members of the public, that they want to have access to what the experts have. And this is how Plato defined it. You have to find a way of the sophos, the experts with their episteme, the knowledge, and the doxa of the opinion of the demos and the people. And I think somewhere along the line we got lost, and we ended up thinking that democracy was about majority rule. And the problem with majority rule is it's very average. No one is the average. And as a result, you just end up with this kind of schism between the experts getting ever more specialized in their field of expertise, and then the demos using their power of the majority to keep drawing in the other direction. And so you end up getting this tension. And I don't claim to have all the answers, but I claim to have, you know, a little bit of it. I've found some pieces that seem to be working, and one of them is just showing people what they can do with this technology, just using tools by themselves, just using what's already available. So I'm going to be, you know, showcasing that, and I think that whatever we see unfold in Hong Kong in the next few days is probably going to be quite, as I say, prescient and as to what might happen globally.
And this was a really important case for the Hong Kong people. This was their big chance to stand up. They'd been handed over from the British to the Chinese, and the Chinese had granted them limited two countries, one rule, or I forget the acronym they used. I think it was 2 systems, 1 nation, something like that. And that had worked for a long time, but recently, when they refused to allow them to elect their governors, the people had the choice to stand up now or pretty much forever hold their peace. So I really do think this was the right point for them to stand up. I don't know what else they could have done. It's been an incredibly peaceful protest. There's been some incidents with the police or with other people in the crowd, but I haven't heard anything about the actual protesters. They set up all of the supply lines, the recharging stations for their batteries, and it seems like they even kept the streets incredibly clean, cleaning up after several attacks, perhaps from the police or the government. Feces was thrown on the street, waste was thrown on the street, and it was the protesters that cleaned up the street time and time again from these attacks. So it's pretty textbook. It's what Gandhi would do. It's a proper kind of protest, but governments don't seem to respond to that anymore. They seem to have tired of the effectiveness of this kind of protest, even when televised live here on the internet, as we've tried to do. It doesn't seem to have that kind of effect. Even they had great numbers. They had the many streets shut down, multiple sections, technology, all of these options. But still, where are we left after a month and a half of protests and a likely crackdown coming?
Well, as Plato would go on to say, because he would correct himself somewhat in Laws, right, which was that systems that tend to work, organized structures tend to collapse in on less organized structures. So whoever organizes the best will tend to win. And the way organisms survive and the way they build what's known as the fitness function in the wild is by adapting quicker internally than the external environment. And so it's up to these protests, not just the ones in Hong Kong, but all over the world, people that are fighting for their existence need to adapt quicker than the system. And we've got something on our side, which is that states, by design, don't innovate. The clue is in the word state, right? They are stateful, and they maintain the status quo. And the modus operandi of the state is that essentially what it does is it attracts parasitical agents that tend not to be very creative in life, tend to just kind of piggyback off of other people's coattails. They'll watch the artists and the technologists, they'll wait for the innovation. Once they see which way the momentum's going to go, they then become parasitical on the new paradigm. And that's essentially how things work. If you look back throughout history, you can, please, if you want to, send me a list of innovative governments. I've yet to see one. Governments would claim in their defense, if they were here to defend themselves, would claim that what they're maintaining is not the status quo, but the peace and order. They're trying to regulate and make sure that things don't get out of hand. And I totally am sympathetic to that. It's just that we found a third way. We found a way that wasn't public and wasn't private either, that actually you could distribute governing, the act of governance, that is taking responsibility, as well as regulating the relationships at the layer of the node. And that a structure like this is much more resilient to any kind of exogenous or black swan-like event, because now everyone can adapt. But a lot of that's going to rely on storage mediums coming down, vastly in price until we can get every book ever written onto a grain of sand. That kind of statefulness. Processing power is going to have, and of course the most important thing is education of the individual, because a lot of people right now don't want to know. They're vaguely aware that things are going on. I think it won't be a choice. I think people will be forced to, because it's going to take some high level, some very public hacks of some databases. And RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland in the UK, the other day had a breach of their IT system. I spoke to someone at a financial journalist about it, and she was sort of telling me that she was taking screen grabs of her bank account because she doesn't trust. And actually I will talk about her more as time goes on, because we've been talking a lot recently. But she's actually very skeptical of Bitcoin. And even when we met, we actually had a coffee at the Bank of England, because it has a little cafe. You can sit in there in the actual historical building itself. And she's very skeptical publicly of Bitcoin, but we've been talking for a while on email, and I've been trying to help her understand the technology, because while she's incredibly intelligent and is just an amazing debater, she's very, very quick. You've got to really, she'll catch you out if you're not switched on. I noticed that she could be even stronger if she understood how the code worked. That if I could just help her to understand what a cryptographic digest is, and what a Merkle root is, and what a database is. Hell, I mean, we still take for granted all of this stuff. So I was explaining this to her to see if I could augment her arguments and make her arguments better, because I think Bitcoin needs stronger critics than it currently has. And she was saying, well, I tell you what, actually, the other day when I was reporting on this RBS story, I started taking screen grabs of my bank account, because she herself doesn't trust them. And I said, well, do you know in database design, there is something called the DBO, database ownership. It's a very small part of the overall topic of database design, but people took for granted all these years of databasing that actually the person with the root level password to the database is God, essentially. That if you've got the password, you can go in, you can start rubbing out entries. Did nobody think of this? Did no one think this might be problematic? And so Satoshi comes along and he says, look, databases are cool and stuff like that, but people can't be trusted. What we need is a distributed database with a state transition rule. And what we say, like third normal form in databasing, you have to have the key, the whole key, and nothing but the key to update the entry in the database. It's been a long time since I did databases, maybe 15 years, so forgive me if I'm misquoting it slightly. Satoshi's like, well, that's cool, but the problem is that someone could just log in as the root password and just undo everything else that was done. So how about the key, the whole key, and nothing but the key, but it's the proof of work by the miners that will transition that state. They will check whether or not this payment can go through, and then do it in such a way that you distribute it widely over a very broad network of disintermediated peers who can't get together and collude because they're all in different countries and they're very diverse. And once you've done it, there's no way to reverse it. How about that for a database? And I said to her, like, this is fundamentally the change that we've made. We're taking away the ownership from a centralized, let's face it, an IT manager most of the time. Because it's not even the executives that are doing this. It's the coders that are mostly doing the grunt work. And so we had recently, you know, Royal Bank of Scotland not only having the IT breakdown, because think about it from their point of view, they've also been, in addition to that, they were also charged with all of the rigging, the FX rigging, the foreign exchange rigging, which is like a $5 trillion market globally and is highly manipulated. And it's basically a bunch of white middle-class men, let's call a spade, shall we, sitting in air-conditioned buildings, trading currencies based on numbers and charts on a screen. They're essentially playing computer games. This may as well be World of Warcraft, but instead of World of Warcraft, instead of goblins and whatever and attack points, they're talking about candlesticks, right? What the hell does this guy know about the price of fish in Hong Kong? What the fuck would he know? He's not out there taking a risk every day. He's just, the biggest risk he takes is fucking crossing a road on the way to work. If he even does that, if he doesn't get chauffeur driven in, if he doesn't take a cab. Right, so this guy's taking no risk whatsoever, and what happened was, so they were fined because they were sharing, you know, these IM chats. They were colluding, and they were fixing. Oh.
Hey guys, so there's been a peaceful resolution to this. What happened? Protesters are breaching barricades to an area that doesn't cover the.
It sounds like we're having audio problems again, but it does look like the police have successfully removed the barricades. They have found a peaceful solution with the protesters. It doesn't look like there was any violence or any kind of anything that we missed while James was offline there. Chris, what do you think? Seems like we're losing James here.
It said there had been a peaceful resolution by the sounds of it.
All right. Well, it looks like we're losing James again, but before that, you were off on a tangent. I've forgotten where you went.
Well, it was just about helping people understand the technology, because the reason these bankers are able to rig these markets is that they've done a great job of making it sound much more complex than it really is. And I'm afraid to say that a lot of developers in the Bitcoin space are guilty of the same, and I can probably only think of a small group who are the exception to that, one of which is Peter Todd, that I'm emailing now, because I think that, you know, to really make this understandable to people, rather than, you know, I got pissed off earlier because somebody from Get Gems fucking emailed me or tweeted me again asking me to, like, promote their stuff, and I'm like, show me the code or get the fuck out. Like, seriously, don't give me this crap. You've got the same old parallax, scrolly, pumpy website that all the rest of them have. You're talking about how you want to get rid of advertising, you excel at advertising. That's all you've done so far. You've got nothing backing this crowd sale up, right? So they want to raise money. Of course there's a countdown timer. Of course there is. Do you even need to ask? And my problem is that you're oversimplifying something that needs to be understood at the ground level. And actually, when you go into the science of this, I'm learning Python at the moment, and that's part of the reason I've been online, partly because I've been unwell, and I've just been trying to just apply myself and just learn this code so that I could understand it well enough so that I could help other people understand it. Because a lot of this stuff is quite easy. If you're doing it in Python, you can run it in the IDE, most, or I think all Macs now come with Python as standard. You can just open up a command line and you can just copy paste code in there, and you just hit F5 and that's it. It just runs it. So yes, it is still code, because I realized when I was going through the blockchain ID stuff that I wasn't going to be able to pull this trick off forever, where I always just get you to download some tool or get you to go to some website and do it. Because eventually these websites will be decommissioned and so on. So I was going to need some way of helping you understand it. I'm not going to be able to escape the code completely. But if I could get together a curriculum, or if I could get together like an open source model for how to help people understand it, and if we could get some really talented teachers to just condense this and condense this and condense it, make it, what you're trying to do is not simplify. You're making it simple, but not making it simplistic. That can't be my expression. I think I've got that from somewhere else. So when what you're trying to do is you're simplifying the education process. You're not simplifying the product. You're not reducing the product down so that it just looks whiz bang and pretty and easy. You're not going to be able to pull an Apple on this, because you have to remember that Apple came out of a context. You remember Apple as in post-1998 Jobs Apple. You don't remember Apple in the 80s. And the difference was that when Jobs came back, he inherited an awful lot of work that had been done by other engineers, such that that industry was ready to be made into art, right? The tools were ready to become toys, because tools mostly do eventually become toys, and most important, jobs, things that used to be very effortful and painful and important and well paid, often do end up becoming commoditized, easy, enjoyable, and mostly I'm trying to think of like poetry. Poets used to get paid a lot, and now they don't get paid anything. Farmers used to be revered. Think of Virgil's eclogues and the farmers all competing on how well they knew how to sow their crops and all this kind of thing. Whereas now, a lot of these things are commoditized, they're taken for granted. And so, yeah, of course, jobs would come along. But now what you're doing is you're trying to, what was the word that BitShares used? Applify. Now you're trying to applify. What the fuck is this shit? I'm coming out of a load of bollocks. And it really is quite patronizing, because you're not giving the public, the demos, very powerful, by the way. They've been known to turn into mobs now and again when they're not happy. You're just treating them like they're idiots. And the problem is that people tend to live up to expectations. So if you expect someone to act like an idiot and you treat them like that, guess what? They're more likely to give you that as a response. And I think it's utterly depraved, and I think it's a very, very bad thing for the industry. And I'm really keen to help people understand it. And that means that you can go to Hong Kong and you can actually show them, look, here's this tool, and it's not just a pretty UI. Like, we'll actually help you understand this, so that when it breaks, you can fix it, or you'll know someone who can fix it, right? Rather than only having this kind of top elite class of people whose first reaction in life when they upon discovering they've got something of value is to raise a fucking crowd fund. That's right. Not, do a YouTube video and help people understand it, not write an informative blog post. Okay, so I would say Peter Todd, let's come up with a good list of these heroes. Vitalik Buterin, I think he's brilliant. I think he's a beautiful mind. He explains things very, very well. And of course, he wrote a lot of really good blog posts for Bitcoin Magazine. I don't know about his business skills. I've yet to see how that pans out. I'm not a big fan of the way they did the crowdfund at Ethereum, but as an engineer and as a thinker, I can't fault him. Who else? Drac. I mean, Drac's been pretty good so far. He's been coming online with us, and he's been helping us understand stuff. And also Viacoin, I think, is very good. It's a genuinely innovative altcoin that really does actually bring value, because Bitcoin have openly claimed that they don't want to do what Viacoin is doing. Seems to be a bit better than Namecoin, which tends to be more about domain name registration. So those would be my heroes, and that's not tangential. I'm not trying to derail this. I'm actually saying that the reason these people are protesting is because they lack the power, and that's because the government is hogging it, and the people want it. They want freedom, they want autonomy, and happiness isn't freedom. Just being happy and just being rich doesn't make you free. Monologue over.
Good points, good points. I'd also add maybe Andreas in there. Roger Ver. People like this have done a lot of work evangelizing Bitcoin, spreading the word, and no one said that they should do this or they have to do this or they're the right person to do this. They chose on their own to do this. Roger Ver was called Bitcoin Jesus because he would go from people to people at parties and tell them about Bitcoin. And he had a group of teenagers around him. He was telling them all about it. And it was his excitement that helped spread Bitcoin. And it's that honest excitement. If you're honestly excited about it, if you read about it, you don't have to be rich with it. You don't have to buy it early or understand the code. It's the excitement for what we can do with a new currency, with a new technology that we've never had the chance to do before in history. And you also have to have the faith to believe that that's possible. And I think a lot of people lack this faith. They haven't been educated about the true causes of these movements. If you look at the civil rights movement in America, it's kind of sold as these couple of heroes, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King. They were the only leaders. They were the only people in that movement, when really it's everyone that sat in at the lunch counter, everyone that got sprayed by a fire hose outside, everyone that was chased by dogs. All of these people are part of the civil rights movement. It's that, that social history, that ground floor roots of history that people are not taught, so then they don't know about. So then when it comes time to actually change history and do something, they're caught flat-footed. They don't know what to do, what steps to take. They're not used to thinking themselves as historical actors, even in a very small portion, but we all are. We're all historical actors, and we can play a part in this Bitcoin thing. It's all open for us. It's still very early.
Blessed are they who educate the masses and really educate them. I mean, really, like when you meet someone who's below you, you've got a choice. You can either hold them down or you can lift them up. You can elevate them. And the people I'm looking for at the moment are the people that elevate people up, because they're not scared. They're not motivated by fear. They're motivated by love, no? And they want to help someone. Like, it should be. I'm getting so frustrated at the moment because I've been very upset because I see a lot of very good, honest people not being rewarded for their work. And some people have emailed me saying, like, no one's offering me a job. I've been in this Bitcoin space for X amount of time. No one's offering me a job. And all I can say to the people that have been sending me those comments is that neither have I. And I totally get it. I totally get it. And the reason that's not happening is because the system isn't there to reward work, even though that's what the Bitcoin protocol tells us should be the case. What you've got is kind of something like Victorian era nepotism, where everything's kept within bloodlines. And the reason for that is actually very understandable. The reason that's happening is because when Gavin at Ethereum starts giving his mates the work instead of that other guy, it's because tacitly underneath in that agreement, the reason he's doing that is because it's not really a payment that he's giving, it's a loan. He's kind of expecting that money to come back one day. He's saying, look, I've got this cash, I've got the keys to this wallet, and I'm going to give the money to you, and if I need it one day, if I need the work, I kind of would like it if we kept it in the family. That's the tacit, unspoken thing. And it creates factions, it creates division, but one thing you do have on your side is you've got a public distributed database. So when you send your ideas to a company, like publish the hash in the blockchain, like send them a message and just say, right, I put up a paste bin, a private paste bin, or put up a GIST file on GitHub, sign it with a key, put the hash in the blockchain to say, and just for the record, just for your records, I thought I would give you this for your records. And and you see, and what you do is you prove that you are the author of this idea, that was your ingenuity, that was your time that you spent thinking about that. And that time required an investment in your education, remember, right? When people like pay you by the hour, they forget all the education that went in to you, they just pay you for that time slot. No, that can't be right. And I'm now coming around to thinking that I've been measuring all my electricity, I've been measuring all my time, I've been measuring my calories, and now when I do work, I'm actually producing the amount of electron volts. That's the amount of electrons that I innovate, that I move around in the producing of that work. And when I present my work to people, I want to say, look, this isn't my electricity, this is everyone's electricity. That electricity has been spent in a finite world where no new electricity will be found unless we make a breakthrough. So that electricity is everyone's. You should at the very least put me back into the state I was in before I did the work for you. At the very, very least. Not for my benefit, but for the benefit of the whole damn universe. Because otherwise, by not paying me or by underpaying, what you're really doing is you're exposing me to the volatility of the world and then walking away with the value. You're leaving me to the whims of nature. And I think that is very wrong, and I think we need to change the way we think so that profit doesn't become the goal, it becomes the result of getting things right. And people pay you profit margin above the means of production because they want you to exist in the future. That's why. What else am I going to do with the money? That's what you do with money. You spend it in the future. You don't go back in time to before you did the work and start, you know, spending it on the work. You spend it to exist, and I think that's why people should start paying each other out of love, not necessity. So that's, you know, that's the change.
It can be very frustrating. Obviously, a lot of people are helping out with this Bitcoin community and trying to create things and trying to help people. And yeah, I do see a lot of people that aren't rewarded for that. And when you do try to sell yourself to a company and explain yourself, you find that you're giving them all these ideas, and you have no choice. How else do you prove yourself to this company but by giving them your ideas? And then, of course, once you've given them your ideas, what need do they have of you? What do they really need you to implement those ideas? So then you're stuck, and you waste all this time thinking about that company. You think about their problems, and you really, at least for me, I work it all the way through. I start with the beginning, I go to the end, I think about what all the things could be. And now I've wasted all that time. All those clock cycles are wasted because that company's probably, well, they're probably not even going to buy advertising from me. I had to explain to them what advertising's for, what marketing's for, why it exists, and I don't think they like that, and they're probably not going to even bother working with me. So it's just, and it's so frustrating because you've wasted all of your time.
Yeah, it's hugely frustrating, and of course the worst case scenario is that they end up taking the idea and profiting from it. And I see, actually, this hasn't just come up because of the lack of job offers. I mean, it's something that I've been thinking about already because I'd noticed the abuse of these communities. And now these communities are, and I was a little bit worried by Ethereum's, and I don't want to speak out of turn. I've yet to really delve into it, but one of the things that worried me about the claims Ethereum were making was that I sort of said to Stefan at one of the talks, do you not think that the Ethereum product is bloated, you're trying to be too many things to too many people, and in key, that it's too prescriptive? And he said, well, on the point of too prescriptive, that they had a community, and that was why they were having this to and fro. And my problem with that is that it's exploitative, because now what you're doing is you're locking in profit to a peer group, an in-group of peers, namely the key holders. Because actually, by the way, just because you work for a company doesn't make you one of the in-group. If you don't know whether or not you're in the in-group, you're not in the in-group. Everyone in the in-group knows that they're there. And it's usually the people that have the key holders, essentially, to the Bitcoin wallet. If you're not one of the key holders, you're not. You can still exert what's called soft power, which is where you've got some blackmail, you know, something you can use as leverage. Maybe you've got the password to one of the websites. It would be really annoying, or the Twitter account. And people do this all the time in companies. They make themselves indispensable by putting themselves in key positions, log positions, and such that it's called the kingpin position, where such that if you release that, then it unleashes hell, and that's how they secure payment. But notice the way that even with the absence of physical violence, we've still got an aggressive factor. There's still an aggravating feature to all of this, which is the passive aggressiveness. So when people can't use physical force, they'll resort to passive aggressive behavior like this. And again, it's not conducive to a peaceful environment because you're not engaging in dialogue. Right, like what's happening in Hong Kong, where the protesters are feeling like they've got no choice but to occupy the land. And why shouldn't they? The land doesn't belong to anyone, right? Like, it wasn't like God gave us the deeds to this place. We didn't. Someone came along and called it theirs. That's all. That's all that happens. And really, like we said in one of the Chris Before Coffee episodes, terror in the territories, what the What the tyrant does is the tyrant defines a territory, and the tyrant says, if you step over this line here, I will unleash terror on you. And he creates a mental object in your head, and you're going to now have to anticipate the fear. And fear is just a mental object. You know, you're just projecting something in your mind. And often our internal fears are much worse than the reality, because we're not very good at estimating our ability to respond in the future. And so what happens is no one crosses the border because they fear the terror in the territory by the tyrant. And this is the ability. They're just bullies at the end of the day. And I think one of the best ways that you can get around this behavior is just turn around and move on, and just keep saying next, keep saying next, 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 next.
So what are we going to do? I think we've lost James. You want to keep going for a little bit more, or do you want to cut this off here?
That plane is ready. I'm not going to sleep, because if I do, I won't get up and I'll get nervous. Because I'm terrified I'm not going to wake up. It's my nightmare. I miss.
Why don't you just set more alarm clocks?
I set 3, but I don't know. I don't trust myself. I've never missed a plane in my life. Touch wood.
Knock on wood, yeah.
I've caught a lot of planes. I used to travel for a living. Like, that was what I did. And I would always get this anxiety that I wouldn't get up on time. And I love early morning flights. There's nothing I love more than getting to an airport like at 6 a.m. and no one's there. You don't have the holiday makers, because they never get the early flights. So you've got a whole airport to yourself, and all the businesses stay open 24/7 because it's an airport, right? So you get all the staff like from the night before. And I don't know, it's kind of cool. I like sitting in airports in the early hours of the morning. I don't know, it's just me, is it? But I just like working it. It's just very nice.
They're okay. I was in Salt Lake City recently in an airport, and I had to stay overnight because my plane was canceled out of Vegas, and it was all right. I just went to some random place, went to a random hotel, pulled back out the next morning, back on the road again. The trip never really stopped. You know, the travel just keeps going. Like, even though I was in the hotel, I was still really like.
Did you go to the 2020 conference?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
For Money 2020, it was pretty good. Met lots of people. I don't know. Conferences aren't so much about the speakers or the conference, or even the conference entry fee. I got like a lot hung up on that, but in reality, if we had a really good attitude, you could do the whole conference from the entrance. You could see everyone walking by with their badges, say, hey, I'd like to talk to you, stop them right there, talk to them, and then if you had a couple people on the inside that you were friends with, they could find out where all the parties are. And that's all you really need at these conferences is where's the parties, where's the free drinks, who's the boss at the party that you can pitch your project to, and maybe over a free drink or two, suddenly you're pals. This whole face-to-face meeting people is really important in this world. So.
Yeah. It's all about the parties, and you've got to know who to hang out with, who to get drunk, you know, who. I mean, it was like that at the Amsterdam conference. It was so political, and I made a point of staying away from those things in the end because I realised these people were too far up their own arses. And like, I don't want to be a part of this club. Like, if you're just going to be an arrogant twat, I don't want to know you anyway. Like, do you know what I mean? I just felt it was the corruption was you could smell it in the air. The VCs were just all over these, you know, hackers, and I'm just sitting there going, why do you sell yourself so short for this stuff? Like, these guys don't care about Bitcoin. This could be anything. This could be bathroom tiles. It's just the next big thing for them. That's all they care about. They want to put money in one end. They want to get more money out of the end. And I understand that this is part of the process, and apparently this is how we run a civilization. So we got to put up with the crowd. It doesn't mean I have to like it along the way. And I think it's very entertaining when I get to moan about it because people tell me it is. So I'm going to keep on moaning about it, so long as it entertains people.
It's bad. One day you're friends and you're both unemployed, broke journalist type people. The next day your friend gets a fancy job making 4 times whatever you've ever made. So, and then that's crushing. That's 4 years of your life are wasted for one of their years now, and they might not even be qualified. Who knows if they can even really do this new job, this new position? But they certainly aren't going to help you out. I mean, it's suddenly it's a very
Why do I want helping out? I don't want to work on something if it's contrary to my values.
well. If they
Why
had
would
anything
I
that
want
was
to work on
problem with
gambling?
your values, they could help you out. I mean, there's like
No, you're missing the
companies.
point. Wait, I'm greedy for a very different kind of profit that these people are greedy for. These people are greedy for a short-term, fast buck profit. I'm greedy for a profit as progress in the long term. It's a totally different type of profit. I'm still greedy, but I'm greedy for wisdom. I'm greedy for the truth. And the thing about publishing, the reason why it's so easy to lie, and the reason why you've got all these allegations against people like Jason King, you know, with Ben Dornberg coming out with these things, is of course it's going to get easier to lie as publishing gets easier and easier, as the barriers to entry to starting a business get lower and lower. It's easier than ever to be discovered. So lying will become more prevalent. But as that lying grows, truth becomes more valuable because truth never goes down in value in the long run. It's true that people don't want the truth all of the time and that we can't bear very much reality, the four quartets. But you do need it eventually. There's no point in lying to yourself forever because remember, in order to be in denial, you have to know what the truth is. Otherwise, it's not denial, it's ignorance. So even the people that lie to themselves still have to cover it up. And I don't care about fucking salaries at 4 times. I don't give a fuck. There are enough good people out there that have been donating to me over the last few weeks when I've been going through a tough time, and I've been, you know, shouting out to people, and people have been responding. People have been sending me Bitcoins, very generous donations, and it's keeping me going. It's like not just, you know, health-wise in terms of eating, but also spiritually as well. Like, it gives me hope that there are some honest people out there. Now, it's true, at the moment, the only people that can really save the day are the people that can't really afford to. Ironically, you know, as I've said before, you're not really free if your freedom depends on the slavery of others, right? If your freedom depends on a third world class and an underclass of citizens in other countries working for slave wages because government, because nation state borders, they can't get out of their situation. You don't have free markets because you don't have free people. It's fundamental. Vinay Gupta, look it up, very good quote he came out with. You don't get free markets without free people. He didn't actually say it as categorically as that. He kind of he posed it as conjecture. And so one of the things was that we have to be more honest. Now that we've got the big picture, now that we can see across all these geospatial lines, what are we going to do? Do we just sit back and do nothing? Because if you do, that's still a response, and it's still going to be remembered. History's still going to remember you as doing nothing. And then meanwhile, you have good people that will do something. And what are you going to look like? And are you going to be the last one to turn up when everyone else is trying to save, you know, humanity from itself? I don't want to be a dick. And it's not just because I don't want to look like a dick. I mean, I actually don't want to be a dick. Like, I want people to hold me to account and say, what are you doing? What change are you making? And who have you helped today? That's the question. And I don't want to be helping people make gambling apps and more fucking dopamine-inducing video games, time sinks, because you're just treating people like they're objects. You're just putting people inside of a hologram and then forcing them to obey your will. That's called being a psychopath. That's why people are uprising all over the world. It's exactly why. They want freedom, they want autonomy.
That seems what a lot of these companies are into, is reducing people into little boxes and understanding how to market to them. And, oh, how much is your website worth? Well, I have this formula that will tell me how much your website's worth, when in reality I'm like, well, my website's my endorsement. It's my word of speak. If I support your wallet software, it's worth more to me in my endorsement and my quality than it is by your formula. Like, your formula is kind of a limited understanding of this niche and this market, and no one seems to be taking that into account. They just want to come into this new sphere and apply their old formulas, and no real respect for what we've managed to do with not a lot here. So.
Yeah, so I need to write this email to Peter Todd because I want to get his thoughts on this thing. but I can hang around.
Well, I think we could close it up for tonight. I think James is off. We're down to just a couple viewers here, but it's been great hanging with you guys, talking about the possible futures of Bitcoin and why it's more than just a technology or more than just a new business idea.
It's a distributed database, and it's a global dialogue with a memory. Like you've got the ability now to prove that something happened at a point in time and space, and as we've already shown with not just the blockchain ID, but we've done some basic contracts. We've outlined a process for doing land deeds very, very simply, very crudely, but it's a proof of concept that once you understand the basic tools and the basic primitives, you realize actually you can do an awful lot with this. And it's not going to be a developer's revolution. This is going to be a people's revolution. It's going to be regular people looking at this technology and going, holy shit, look at what you can do with this. You can do all this really cool stuff. And the developers are just going to stand around going, we were over-engineering it the whole time. We overcomplicated things. And actually, I believe in people, not governments, not so-called experts. I believe in people.
A beautiful thought to close on. We believe in people. Until next time, bye-bye.